Hello and welcome to ClockTower Game Studios. Today I'm going to be tackling how to do lighting for buildings, and I'm doing this on the second floor, kind of the signage for the transportation hub. One of the things that inspired this was these pictures of MDF terrain that's had lighting kits added to them from Brutal Cities Wargaming. They're not a sponsor or anything, I just really found these pictures inspirational and wanted to try and tackle my own version of it. So one of the things that I love about these is the really dramatic, really harsh lighting, but the problem is they're also very expensive kits, and then the lighting kits are even more expensive. So we're going to see about tackling our own version of it for a little bit cheaper. As you can see, I've made some progress since our last video. I've got the interior of the transit hub done. I've trimmed down the exterior rail, like I said. I've got an interior wall put in with spaces marked for interior doors, and I've started making shelves and countertop sections. Here you can see I've got a shelf unit that's going to be mounted to the wall right there, and the opening in the front is also going to have a shelf. So here I'm going to do wooden countertops all the way across these. I've used foam core to kind of build the outside front structure, kind of the kickboard so to speak, and then put inside some supports that'll hold the countertop up. Here I have the roof section that fits on top, and I've already cut holes for where I'm going to put the lighting, and then we're going to use these kind of cheap LED lights that I picked up at a local hobby store. They're from a company called Bloom, and they were really cheap. They were like $7 I think for a string of 15 lights. To avoid an overly long video, I'm just going to show the section of this that's related to actually putting in the lights and building the encasement for the battery pack and everything. So I'm just going to start by getting the lights straightened out, and then I'm going to kind of line up where I want them to be, and then the next thing you'll see is me taping them into place. So these are all run in sequence on a matching set of wires. It's really fine wire. If you straighten it out, you can bend it into shape and it will stay in shape a little bit. So I know that I need to have another set of stairs because I'm going to put a little bit of a lift on the back section there so that there's space to hide the lights and to leave room for some signage. So I know that I need to leave room for that, and here I'm gonna start by putting the battery pack at the back, and I'm just kind of laying out where I want my lights to be right now. As you can see, they're kind of fiddly, the wire's a little stiff, and it's a little bit difficult to get them to stay where I want them to at this point. So this is mostly just done as a way to get an idea where I want them, how they're going to line out, and how I'm going to use them. At first, I thought I was just going to use these for the interior lighting and I wasn't going to do any signage. But then after looking at it and seeing how the lights were going to line up, I decided that I was going to cut notches around the outside edge of my pink foam here, my insulation foam, to make room for signage with backlighting. So as you can see, I've just kind of lined it up, I've got it cut to shape, and now I'm going to need to get to work on my stairs now that I know exactly how I'm going to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and get my battery pack cut up, like all that cut up and put into place, and you're going to see me doing that next. So here you can see I've got my notch cut out for my battery pack for the lighting strip, and I'm just kind of taking a look at it, making sure it's where I want. I left a little bit wider area there so I could get to it a little bit better to actually work the switch while it was still out of the way for storage and concealment, because I want to be able to hide all of this so it's not terribly obvious. So before going on, I decided the next thing I wanted to do was to tape the lights into position. That way I could see where they're going to be at and what it's going to take to actually get them put down where I wanted and how I needed to proceed from here. So I've got those all taped in, and as you can see, I've got some of the lights on the edges there curled up where the signs will be, and I've got my slot for my battery pack cut. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and get the next layer actually put together. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to spread on some Elmer's glue, some plain PVA white glue, get it spread all around. I'm going to be careful to keep as much of it as I can away from the holes for the lights. but I want to make sure that I've got a nice thin even coat all the way across all of it, because I want this to bond really well. This is going to be sort of a structural element that has the potential to take some abuse during transport and during gameplay, so I want to make sure that it's as solid as possible. So here you can see I'm just, again, running a bead of this all over the place. And then I'll spread it around with a cut off piece of foam core so I can make sure that it's a thin coat. Now, I am still being very careful to try and avoid getting any excess glue into the area around the lights or over the edges. I just want to make sure that it's across the entire surface where the foam's going to be in contact with it, because like I said, I want that bond to be nice and strong. Then, because I'm impatient and I want to continue working right away, I use a little bit of hot glue around the outside edges of the project and across a couple of the spots in the middle where I was worried about the bond being weak. And I just put a little hot glue in so that this will bond a little more quickly and I'll be able to get straight to work. So like I said, I just get some hot glue on there and then very quickly get the next piece of foam into place and weight it down. When weighting down the foam so the glue will bond, I make sure to use a piece of paper as kind of a barrier, and then I use an older out edition rule book just in case glue does get through. It's nothing that I'm going to be terribly upset that I've damaged a little bit. And then I just move the excess out of the way, and the next thing it's time to do is to get to work on those stairs and hiding the access point for the battery pack. So what I do next is I cut up a piece of foam core to use as sort of a retaining wall or a backing edge to build the stairs against. And the first thing I need to do is mark out where I want to put the separation that's going to be where the cover goes over the slot for the battery pack. So I lined it up and I just marked it right there against it. I didn't bother to measure it. And then I'm going to use my square to cut it nice and straight. That way at least my angles are correct. As you can see, I've gone ahead and finished building up all the stairs. I used the same methods that I did in my previous video about the transportation hub. So the only difference is I made the top portion of the stairs removable, and I've done my best to hide that seam underneath one of the stairs. That way I can pull it out and it'll look mostly innocuous and it won't really stand out as being a problem. As you can see, I've also left a channel in the bottom of the base level for the wiring to fit through. After finishing the stairs and giving everything a chance to dry, as you can see, I've made a little more progress. I painted the underside of the ceiling so it looks a little better, and I've kind of cleaned everything up, just kind of tidied it up a little bit. So I haven't painted anything on the inside of the light wells because I'm going to be covering those with an opaque sort of translucent material, so you won't be able to see the inside of them anyway. As a side note, I should have gone back and put foil or a reflective surface. I have some mirrored material that I should have put in there to help disperse and diffuse the light and make it reflect all across and give it a more even lighting tone. But you know, lessons learned for next time. Anyway, moving back to the stairs, the next thing I decided I wanted to do is magnetize the stairs so they come out. This is for a couple reasons. One, I want them to be solid during gameplay. I don't want them to accidentally come loose or fall out. It'll also make it easier to transport the whole thing. That way, you know, I don't lose the stairs during transportation. The magnets will keep it in place. And then I also wanted to be able to get to the battery pack and the switch this way. Again, this will hide the switch. It'll also hide the battery pack, and it'll still give me access to it later if I ever need to change the batteries. Gameplay wise, these should last a very long time. The LEDs are relatively low power, and the packaging said that they should last upwards of 180 hours. So I'm not really worried about them burning out, but eventually they will. So the first thing I do is I just score into the cardstock lining of the foam core, and I'm just going to cut it out really carefully and notch it, and then I'm going to cut out and peel out some of the foam. After getting the slot cut out for the magnet, I go ahead and I take the foam core that's left on the cardstock, and I take my hobby knife and I just cut that off, so I've just got the piece of cardstock I removed. I want to make sure that that's solid and in place, and I want to make sure it lines up right. So there, I've got that taken care of. I do the same thing, and then I glue the magnets into place with hot glue. So I chose hot glue here because I wanted it to melt into the foam, and I wanted it to bind really nicely with the magnets. The magnets being metal, sometimes super glue doesn't hold it very well, and I figured by more or less encasing the whole thing in melted foam and the hot glue and then putting the paper over the top of it, it should be basically one solid piece with the magnet embedded in it. So I just do that to both of these, and after spreading a little bit of the hot glue around, I put the cardstock back on top of it to hide the magnets. After getting the magnets into place in the stairs, I decided to use paint, and I just painted the bottom side of the magnets. This way, I know which side of the magnet needs to be face down into the base of the stairs, and it also allows me to mark where I want the stairs magnets to be. So there you can see it left me 2 nice paint dots. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the stairs themselves on here. I'm just going to cut out those spots and put the magnets in. Once I'd had a chance to mess with it a little bit, I didn't like how the wire fit down into the slot with the battery pack. So I decided to change the orientation of the battery pack, and instead of having it in there vertically, I put it in there horizontally, right underneath where the cardstock that I'm going to use for the first couple inches of floor on that top level is going to be. So I've just got that pushed in there, and I've got just a little bit of lead wire that fits underneath the alcove in the bottom of the steps, as well as underneath there in the slot below the battery pack. And I double checked this and made sure that once the cardstock is glued both for the rails and for the decking, it's still going to be accessible. I'm still going to be able to pull out the battery pack at least far enough to get it out and change the batteries, and then it just pushes back in there. And as you can see here, the magnets just drop the steps right into place. It takes a little finagling. I've got to make sure that the wires get pushed in where they're supposed to be from the battery pack, but I really like the fit. I like the way everything goes together, and I'm ready to move on to the next step. So I'm not showing a one step here that I did, which was gluing the top on. I'm skipping instead to gluing on the translucent coverings for the lights. So here you can see I'm using stencil blanks, which is a thin plastic that's just a few millimeters thick, or a millimeter or so thick. It's translucent, so you can see through it. And it works nice for this because it'll be sturdy, it lets light through, it diffuses the light a little bit. Like I said earlier though, I wish I would have put like a piece of foil backing or something in the alcoves around the lights, just so it would have been a little more reflective and a little more diffuse lighting, but you work with what you've got, and this is a lesson learned for next time, and I will be doing this again. I want to continue lighting more of the buildings for Neo Nagoya. So here I just take this thin plastic, I cut it down to size, and I want it to be a little bit away from the outside edge. I don't want it to go all the way to all the edges. My theory here is I'm going to build a frame to go around this out of cardstock that'll be part of the railing around where the upper floor is. So I want to make sure I leave a little room for that, and I want to leave room for the glue to bond all the way through to everything. So here I'm just going to spread glue on real thin, and as you can see I've done both sides now. I've done the undersides, and I've put on stickers that translate to Kawana Eki and bus station. So what that means is it's Kawana station and buses. It's inspired by the subway station actually that I lived nearby while I was in Japan for study abroad. So this is kind of the finished product as far as this goes. There's still a little work to do, but it's really boring stuff just putting the railing around it. All I have to do, addition to normally putting the railing around and framing everything in, is I will be cutting holes for the windows, or for the lighting. Here you can kind of get an idea what the finished product will look like in its entirety, where you can see into the building. You'll be able to see the details I'm going to build inside there, including the food counters, the cash register, the ticket counter and all that business. It'll also backlight some of the posters I'm going to put in the windows, so that'll all be great effects. And I'm really happy with how clean this turned out looking so far, and I'm looking forward to moving on to the rest of the build, which will actually probably focus on the interior of the building and will be next week's video, where I'm probably going to build the counters, the ticket stand, do some of the signage, and do some of that sort of stuff. So if you want to see that, be sure to subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned anything, if it inspired you anyway, be sure to hit the like and the notification bell so you get told whenever we put up more videos. If you'd like to support us in other ways, you can of course always shop at the affiliate links in the description below. You buy the items that we used in this video and in this project so far, and it's at normal cost to you, doesn't cost anything additional, but we get a little bit of a kickback for it. Also, you can support us by buying us coffee at buymeacoffee.com. And you can also sign up for our Patreon, where monthly we do short stories tied into S.E.E.R missions, as well as access to the S.E.E.R gameplay rules. That's all included in that bundle. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check those out, also in the description below. And most importantly, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. And remember, at the Clock Tower, it's always game time.